All right, so I'm working on the Mustang today. A couple weeks ago, I was at work, got done with work, walked out to the car, turned the ignition on, and nothing. If I turned the key to the accessory, the radio would come on, but if I turned it on, everything went dead. So, having dealt with the Honda CR-V and key issues with it, I didn't want to mess with the ignition switch if I was going to have to reprogram keys, this and that and the other. I was kind of worried about that. And so I took it to a shop. And I've discovered since then that the key, the security system isn't tied into the ignition switch quite that way, and so I would have been safe fixing it myself. But I took it to who I thought was a pro to work it. He called me up the next day and said that there was a broken wire that had caused the issue. And I didn't have access to wiring diagram. I hadn't found the wiring diagram at that time, so I trusted his diagnosis. And I went and picked up the car after he repaired the wiring. And he told me he just basically jumpered past one wire. And as I pulled away, I went to turn the stereo on, and the stereo doesn't come on. So a couple days later, I took it back to him, and he said, "Oh, well, we checked and you have power at the radio, so the radio's the problem." This car's 20 years old, and I've never had a problem with the radio until right after this guy works on the power system. So, to give you just a little bit of an idea, I'm very picky about my wiring, and this is how he jumpered past the wire. He came to this green and purple wire that's in the harness, and he jumpered it with speaker wire and ran the speaker wire alongside the harness back up over here. And I found where he went through the firewall here on the other side. I can see that he basically poked a hole in the grommet to run the wire through. So not professional wiring work. Not, and I understand if you got to run another wire, you got to run another wire, but there's good ways and bad ways of doing it, and poking a hole in the grommet is kind of the wrong way to do it. So I'm going to have to fix this splice and put a good splice in, but also I need to come in here and find the rest of that wire, because I'm thinking that wire he spliced is not the problem, and I'm willing to bet he did not go to the green and purple wire inside. I'm willing to bet he's backfeeding the ignition circuit, because I looked at the wiring diagram, and that green and purple wire runs from here to the ignition switch. So if that wire broke, how could I have power in the accessory position and not in the on position? There's something that I'm not being told. There's something that was misdiagnosed. I do have a new ignition switch put in today, so I've started tearing apart the interior. I've got some of the panels out already. I'm going to pull apart the whole dashboard because I want to get in here anyways. I have the blend door is not working right, and I need to figure out why not. And so I'm going to pull the dashboard out. But while I'm in there, I'm going to find this wire that he spliced into, find out what color he spliced into, and figure out how this thing is running now. I want to undo the bad work and do good work. And then also get my stereo working again. I like having tunes while I drive. So let's see what we find. So when the technician told me that my radio was broken because there's power to the radio, that makes me wonder, because I looked at the wiring diagram and 5 of these wires are supposed to carry power into the radio. So if one of those isn't working, my radio's not working. So I need to dig in the wiring diagram also at some point, and I'll put a link to the wiring diagram down in the description for those of you who have S197s. But it doesn't track to me, especially if I'm having a power delivery issue with the car, that all of a sudden the radio doesn't work, but it's got power to it. How many power wires did you check? Let's see. So if you've never done electrical troubleshooting, most of electrical troubleshooting is narrowing down what the possibilities can't be until you're left with only one possibility. And I've taught a lot of young technicians how to troubleshoot electrical wiring by breaking it down. How can you divide the circuit in half? Is the problem before here or after here? So that's my method of troubleshooting electrical wiring. So if you look here, this is the power distribution box. It's under the hood with a light green violet wire that I was pointing out that's been spliced. And he supposedly spliced it from here to here, and that fixed my issue. Now M, N, and O here are the outputs from your ignition switch. One of those, I believe O is your accessory circuit, N is your on circuit, and M is your start. So if this wire is broken, how do I have power going out on the black and pink wire and not on the white and yellow wire? That's where I have a problem with his diagnosis and his fix. In the past, I've talked about tools I like, and I don't shy away from showing you good tools. This is my Milwaukee cordless screwdriver. I've had this for over 25 years. I had to replace the batteries in the charger once already, but this is just hands down one of the best tools I've ever invested in. When I used to work on Nissans, the original Nissan Altima, I could change out the stereo on one of those in 10 minutes with this thing. You just get it on the screw. You can see it takes a adapter, so you can actually put a socket on the end, and it's crazy fast for what it is. That's on low speed. Let's set it on the high speed. There we go, screws out. When you got to take out a bunch of screws, I've got to recommend one of these. For the most part, I've gone to Makita for all my cordless tools now. You know, I've got the drivers like that, and that's, you know, my lawn tools and everything are all in the same battery. But this, you know, I can't effectively use a battery that size for a tool like this, so I don't mind having a second battery for this. So they do still sell these, I believe. It's kind of crazy. It's a 6-volt system instead of 18 or 20 or whatever, how many volts. But the motor's got the torque to get the job done. Battery technology has way surpassed it, but they still make them. They're still reliable. There's modern versions. I haven't tried one of the modern versions. I imagine they're probably better. Makita probably has one. I don't know, but I've had this for 25 years, and Milwaukee's one of those brands that if I was looking to replace my batteries and my tools, I wouldn't hesitate to go with Milwaukee. Just like, you know, I like Makita, I like Milwaukee, I like DeWalt. So there you go, tool tip there. Get you one of those screwdrivers. You can be doing a lot of dashboard work. All right, so I didn't need to pull the dashboard all the way apart to get to this. I could have just pulled this cover, but I found where he spliced in, and he did splice into the wire he said he did. But that, I don't think, fixed the problem. I can see here, this wire next to it, that looks like it's also green and violet. I don't know, but look at that. That is right here. I could feel it bendy. The wire's broken right there. That wire is broken. So did he splice into the wrong wire? And I'm thinking he did. I'm gonna nip this wire and put a splice junction on it. I'm gonna splice this wire back together on both sides and plug everything back in maybe and see where we get. I don't know. I still got to get in deeper here and figure out what's going on with the blend door. But I think I'm going to undo this before I get any further. So how could this wire being broken most of the way through cause this problem? Well, I have seen this a while back working on a generator for the Air Force. I had a wire that was broken through except for like 1 or 2 strands, and it would carry low current, but as soon as you went to a higher current draw on the circuit, all of a sudden it dropped dead because it couldn't get enough power through. And I'm thinking that may be why I had power on the accessory circuit and not on the other circuits. Your accessory circuit, you're very limited on how much power you're drawing, and whenever you kick the ignition to on, all of a sudden all sorts of other stuff power up and it increases your current draw. That could be the issue. It's not that likely, but I have seen it before, so I'm not gonna rule it out of hand. So I need to. I'm gonna affect the repair. Like I said, I'm gonna splice this wire here back together, and then cut this wire here where it feels like it's broken, and splice it and see if that fixes it. All right, so I've gone ahead and took out the wire he had jumpered across that, because I don't believe he actually jumpered from here to here. I believe he jumpered from here to here, and that's how he was bypassing the accessory. It still shouldn't work that way. I'm not entirely sure how he got it to work, but what he said failed couldn't have caused the issue, and the repair he did shouldn't have fixed the issue. And I'm a little bit nervous that I've reintroduced a new problem by fixing this stuff, but I fixed everything back to how it was from the factory. So if nothing else, I'm back to square one with troubleshooting this. But I've undone the cluster job that he did repairing it. And the one thing I'm confident of is that this had to be the problem here. Now, I could have a break in the white-yellow, and that's why I didn't have power on, but I still had accessory. But if that were the case, you know, I would also, you know, have issues with the start circuit. So I believe the ignition switch was the issue. I've got the new ignition switch in already. We'll see how this goes. I'm confident, you know, that this is everything is pointing towards this. And if troubleshooting is narrowing down what it can't be to what it could be, I've already taken out what it can't be, and I've instituted a fix that is what it should be. I had, you know, but, you know, having the dashboard all tore apart, everything tore apart, I really couldn't check for power in these places. So maybe I should have troubleshot that before I tore it all apart. But, you know, I am where I am, and, you know, I've got stuff to get done today. So anyways, I'm going to get the dashboard out and finish doing the other repair on it and then see where this gets me. All right, so now on to my HVAC problem with the Mustang. Here's your 3 actuators. This one I've got, you can't see it too well, but I've Sharpied defroster onto it. This is the one that actuates the defroster. This is your mode actuator, and this is your blend door actuator. I'm getting hot air out of the vents, and I'm getting air out of the wrong vents. So I bought a new blend door actuator, and I'm not entirely sure I got the right one. All 3 of my actuators are 5-pin. And so all 3 of these motors have 5 pins in them. The new blend door actuator I got has 2 pins. So I know it's not right. And then also the gear is different. So that's a fail on that. These 2 are supposed to be the same part, and I've replaced this one already. And as you can see, the arm is wrong. So whenever I hooked it up, I guess I didn't do the, you know, you pull the fuse out of your HVAC system before you replace this motor, and that way whenever you power it back up, it'll set to centered, and so then whenever you plug the motor in, the motor's in the right place to swing your arm. Well, what I found was this arm was just loose in there. It had popped off, and when you stick it in, it's 90 degrees off from where it's supposed to be. So somewhere along the way, I got something wrong, and it popped the arm off, and that's why I'm getting air out of the wrong vents. But as far as the heat, and I have some control over the heat, but it doesn't get cold, it just gets warm. So this is a fail. It's the wrong part entirely, even though it was sold on Rock Auto as being the blend door actuator. So now I got to figure out, I've got to find a 5-pin actuator. I don't know how to reset this to the correct position without plugging it in, and it's going to be facing the wrong way. I'm going to get another actuator, I think. And then I'm not sure, I think I still need to get another blend door actuator. And yeah, what a mess. Alright, so I got it reclocked. I'm not sure that I have it reclocked correctly, other than here's what they look like normally. Oh, it's pretty close. I think it's spot on. This is new from the factory, so I'm assuming that's the centering position for this. So whenever I put it, I'm going to pull the fuse and put it back together and see how it goes. And hopefully all 3 of my actuators are actually correct. I'm hoping that the warm air I was getting was because of this one going to the wrong door. That shouldn't be it, but the air conditioning compressor is not kicking on right now, which is a whole nother problem I have to investigate, but this should get me closer. Alright, so if you have a S197 Mustang, this is the easiest way to get to your actuators. The problem is you're liable to crack your dashboard. This one's been in and out a few times, so I'm not surprised that it cracked. It's a pain in the butt. Ford made it easy to get to the point where you can take these out, but really to get these out, it's a 2-man job. Once you get the bolts loose, you want 2 people on this at all times. I had to call my wife out here to help me, and I still managed to break it. You don't want this rolling over. You don't want to grab this anywhere. You want to grab a hold of this bar or this cage on the end when you're pulling the dashboard in and out, and your center console area is going to get hung up on the shifter. It's a pain in the butt. You have to rotate it. This cracks easy. If you notice, I'm already missing all the little tines out of here. That's long ago. I need to figure out a way to 3D print a piece for that. But I also removed the defrost vent. But this is your mode door actuator here. This controls your heating vents and your AC vents. This over here is your defrost control, and this activates this door here, opening and closing it. And that's to that vent setup right there. If you see, this has a piece on the other side that goes, this foam here goes to, and that's how it blows out the vents. My foam was all in pretty decent shape, so I'm not going to mess with that if I don't have to. I'm ready to put this back together, but I'm going to plug these in, and then we'll go inside and I'll show you where the blend door actuator is. There we go. All right, here's your blend door actuator right here. Really easy to get to with the dashboard out. All three of these are a pain in the butt, and it takes an hour to get the dashboard out. When I replaced the mode actuator last time, I spent 4 hours trying to get the new one in because of that plastic ductwork that was inside the dash was in the way. If I just yanked the entire dashboard from the get-go, it had gone faster. But I didn't, and so here I am going through it again through the backwards way. Just pull your dashboard if you got to replace those. Replace them all in one set if you can afford it. You know, it's $50 a piece for these, so I mean it's not cheap, but you know, buy the Ford Motorcraft parts so you know it's going to last a while. Buy all three, pull your dashboard out, do them all in one go, get it done with. So, and if you didn't notice, if you haven't known this before, I'm going to put a link in the description to the video I found on how to take the dashboard out because it's excellent. But your steering column comes out with the dashboard. So that makes this really easy to work on whenever you get to this point. All right, so we're at the moment of truth here, and I'm already hearing promising sounds. The CD player is going through and cycling all the CDs. The battery's hooked back up. I've got everything plugged in. I don't have the dashboard all together, but I got everything plugged back in. I pulled my two HVAC controls there, the two fuses from the fuse box down there. It's number 10 and number 18 or 20. I don't know. Look in your manual. But if I turn it to on, or to accessory, I did already cycle the power, so I turned the stereo off because it was blaring static. And if I turn it to on, car runs and fires up like it's supposed to. The repair he did was wrong, and he was backfeeding the circuit because he spliced into the other light green and purple wire. The ignition switch was a problem, which I told him on the front end. I said, it seems like it's probably the ignition switch, but you know, I don't know if I have to program keys, blah, 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 so I'd like you to look at it. It really matters what shop you take your vehicle to. There are so many idiots out there, and I'm not going to air the guy's shop name out because I think he thought he was doing a legitimate repair. He wasn't trying to do me dirty. He just didn't know what he was doing. We really need strong diagnosis skills in this country if we're going to be a world leader, and people aren't teaching that. Logic skills are required for troubleshooting. So if you're going to be a technician, you've got to develop these skills. You've got to be able to divide a circuit into two and say, well, I can tell you the problem is not in this part because this cannot happen. The problem's got to be in this part of the circuit, and then you can narrow it down, narrow it down, narrow it down. He spliced into the wrong wire here, and once I fixed that, I fixed the crack that was in the other wire, or the crunchy section. I don't think that was a problem. I think it was just crunchy, but I fixed that anyways, put the new switch in, and boom, problem's fixed. Really frustrated the fact that I had to spend all this time doing this because he didn't do it right on the get-go. I did get in there and do my HVAC fix, so that's the other thing I need to check and see is if I fixed that. So, oh, I've got the fuses pulled. Yeah, duh. Okay, so, okay, I got the fuses back in. I'm not getting anything. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's defrost. All right, my vents are working correctly now. And I can't really tell a change. The engine's not warmed up, but okay, I fixed 2 problems. Got my radio working again, got my HVAC working again. Happy day, except if you're working on an S197 and you park outside all the time, these dashboards are fragile. I demolished my dashboard. And this piece is separable from the rest of it, but you have to tear down the entire dashboard, and you can't order this piece. Thank you, Ford. So I'm happy and I'm disappointed. Very disappointed. This whole mess could have been avoided if the guy had done, if I'd have told him, hey, the ignition switch is bad, and he just replaced that on the front end, he'd have fixed the whole problem, and he wouldn't have had to dive into doing funky wiring fixes. Bad maintenance. This is very bad maintenance. And this is easy to get to. You know, I had everything apart because I had to do other work, but you take the column covers off and it's right there. So why he didn't just replace that on the front end, I guess he was afraid to listen to what I was telling him and to read the wiring diagram. I think it's a bigger issue is he can't read a wiring diagram. So anyways, have a good one.